Welcome back to Pin and Reel. I'm your host, Uncle Joel, and today we're looking at Dark Knight's Death Metal, Rise of the New God. I'm a big fan of the cosmic side of the DC Universe. I love when comics play with larger concepts like the Overvoid and different aspects of reality and cosmic entities and whatnot. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about Scott Snyder's run on Justice League in the lead up to Death Metal, with the introduction of additional cosmic entities and expanding upon the concept and the nature of the multiverse and the omniverse. And so I think that's one of the reasons I've been a bit disappointed with the Death Metal event up until this point. We had all this buildup of Perpetua, and we get the promise of this big conflict surrounding Perpetua and the multiverse and the omniverse and different cosmic entities that are going to judge her for the way she has built and conducted herself. But then for the past several months now, we haven't really had much of that conflict. Like, all of the story up until this point has shifted away from Perpetua and focused more on the Batman Who Laughs. And this one-shot, this tie-in here, seems to be trying to address some of that. Now, I do feel that this is a bit mistitled. I'm not really sure what else I would title it, but I feel like the cover and the title of the book makes it feel like it's going to be focused entirely on the Batman Who Laughs, aka the Darkest Knight. But really, he functions more as a background character throughout the majority of this book, which initially I was a little bit annoyed with. We get in the opening pages the presentation of we finally get to see the Darkest Knight confront Perpetua, and there is a promise of a big battle to come. And we get kind of flashes of that battle, but it's more just background images of them throwing punches, essentially. And really, the majority of this issue is focused on other characters. So we get the setup and the introduction of what I was looking forward to, and we immediately sidestep that and focus on an entirely new character, the Chronicler. But as much as that initially annoyed me, I wound up really appreciating it because the Chronicler is himself building upon those concepts, those greater, grander, more cosmic concepts that I really enjoy. And so, while on one hand, yes, we are promised something and then we do not receive it, we get something else entirely that I also enjoy, much in the same way I would have enjoyed the other thing. Now, I'm not crazy about the Chronicler's design, specifically his head. I don't think it looks the best, but aside from that, I do find the character really interesting. I especially found it interesting that they paired the Chronicler with Metron, who is another character who functions in a very similar capacity. It promises and teases a lot more grander cosmic characters that might be out there. Now, this is introducing concepts that personally I would love to work with as a writer. I would love nothing more than to work for DC and to really expand upon the concepts presented here and just play with the nature and the structure of the DC universe, particularly in getting into the grander omniverse and the multiverse and Perpetua and the Source and the Chronicler and all of this different stuff. And the nature of this story, the way James Tynion writes it, it's very meta and is very much reflecting upon the nature of the DC universe up until this point. The Chronicler criticizes the DC universe, and he says that there is just so much power inherent within the universe that it doesn't make sense that it would have gotten to the point that it is, that it's on the brink of destruction. And this seems to be a recent trend brought about at least since Rebirth, particularly with Geoff Johns, but even with some of the other writers, of just critiquing how dark the DC comics have gotten. There are so many strong, powerful characters here that there should be far more hope within the universe, and that it is within those stories that we can actually find more hope, as the Chronicler here finds hope for the universe by the way that he examines it. And the way the Chronicles portion of the story ends, it says to be continued, but it doesn't specify where. And all of the other tie-ins and individual issues of this event so far have specified where those story beats are going to continue. And so I'm not really sure where the Chronicler himself is going to reappear or where this story beat is going to pick up. This character may wind up being crucial to the rest of the event, but it may also be setting up for greater things that are going to come out of the event. And that's one of the things that I appreciate so much about this issue. So much of the way the event has worked up until this point has felt quite linear to me. Like, yes, the story is ultimately a battle for the existence of the multiverse, but it was essentially functioning as these four different factions are all going to eventually come together and battle, and the fate of the multiverse is in the balance. And so, while there are all these different grand concepts being thrown about in the event, ultimately it felt like there was only one destination it was really going to come to. And the outcome might vary, but the only thing that really changes there is what the universe will look like after. And so far, the event has felt like there's really only going to be this one possible destination, whereas this issue really makes it feel far more expansive and feels like there's a lot more potential there. And so ultimately, even though the issue failed to deliver on the promise that I felt like it was making, I still really appreciated the issue, and I feel like it creates a ton of potential for stories going forward. And the backup story is the continuation of the story told in Multiverse's End, except this one more exclusively focuses on the Green Lanterns, specifically the human Green Lanterns. And this backup story is okay. The final panel does have a hint at a possible development that could be interesting going forward, but aside from that final panel, I don't feel like this story really added much to the event, but it was still decent and, worth a quick read. I wouldn't have purchased it on its own, but as a backup story to the already excellent main story, it's okay. Although it does provide a little bit of something that I would really like to see in the future. And that's specifically all of the different human Green Lanterns working together, but their different personalities and the way they function serving different purposes. It would take a really talented writer to be able to pull it off well, but I would like to see a story focused on all 6 of these different lanterns working together, with their strengths and weaknesses playing off one another, and each of them being essential to accomplishing their ultimate goal. But that being said, I have a lot of ideas for Green Lantern. Some of it is stuff that's been hinted at in books in the past, such as the Human Green Lantern Corps. So I could really go off on a tangent and just rant and rave about all the things that I want to see done with Green Lantern, or if I could write for DC, all the things that I would do as a Green Lantern writer. So I'm not going to focus too much on that here, as that's really completely tangential to the story here. So overall, I would say that this book is probably my favorite tie-in, honestly probably my favorite issue of the entire Dark Knight's Death Metal event up until this point. The backup story is okay, but not really anything important, but the main story is really, really good and has my mind spinning with all kinds of different ideas and all the different possibilities that could come out of this. If you appreciate the cosmic side of the DC Universe, if you are interested in the more metaphysical concepts and, just the meta ideas that are presented reflecting on the nature of comics and the nature of the universe, I would highly recommend this book. So yeah, if you've read the issue, I'd really be curious to hear your thoughts. Hopefully I'm not overhyping it. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of the Chronicler, and if you'd be interested in seeing more of him and his ilk in the future. And if you could help me out with my battle against the YouTube algorithm by hitting like, I'd really appreciate it. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of my Dark Knight's Death Metal coverage, as well as other DC and comic book related content. And until next time, this is Uncle Joel saying, stay tangible.